Well, you may remember Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester, the father-daughter writing team. They were with us some time ago to talk about a book that was centered around a Battle Creek case called The Murder of Maggie Hume. Now, Blaine and Victoria have come back to talk about their next book, which is now available, called The Original Battle Creek Crime King. And they're here to talk about that right now. Good morning to you both.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Welcome back. Welcome back.
Always good to be back in BC.
Well, and let's talk about that because, Blaine, these were your stomping grounds some time ago, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm a graduate 1980 out of Harper Creek High. Born in Virginia but raised here.
All right. And where's home these days?
Culpeper, Virginia.
Okay.
Back in the hinterlands.
Got it. All right. Did you get any hurricane rain there?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Just a dusting for a day.
Dusting for a day. All right. And Victoria, you make your living in the medical profession, don't you?
Yep. I'm a night nurse at the local hospital in Fauquier,
Okay.
Virginia.
So how did this writing collaboration start? Let's talk about this first.
Yeah, it all started with Maggie Hume, really.
Yeah, when we were doing the book tour for Maggie Hume, the people from Heritage Battle Creek said, you got to look at our file on Pump Arnold. So we stopped by and took a look at it. And at first I was a little skeptical. I was like, I don't know if there's enough for a book here. So let's do some digging. And we started doing some digging, and it got it's the strangest true crime we've ever done because it's more funny than serious. Even though Pump did end up killing his own son, when you start getting into it, it was just a riot to actually go through some of the stuff that we were reading from that time era, the Victorian era.
And old Pump is the guy to whom we refer, original Battle Creek Crime King. His name is Adam Arnold, really. Where did this pump thing come from?
He owned a pump business in Battle Creek where he made wooden pumps and wooden piping. And he owned that for 3 or 4 years, but that nickname stuck with him for his whole life.
So is it fair to call him, I don't know, Battle Creek's Tony Soprano or something of the time?
Actually,
Pretty close. Yeah. That's pretty accurate. He got away with a lot.
Yeah, he really did. He was, how did we put it? He was into prostitution, illegal liquor sales, legal liquor sales. He did everything from loan sharking to a little bit of outright robbery. Tried to have people killed, witness tampering, a little bit of everything.
Does sound like The Sopranos, doesn't it?
It really does, but with a slight Battle Creek twist to it.
And we'll talk about that coming up in just a moment. In fact, we'll sort of set the scene here and talk a little bit about this and kind of whet the appetite to pick up a copy of the original Battle Creek Crime King. And you'll be signing those soon, I presume, right? Yep.
We're in the Albion bookstore this afternoon from 3 to 5. And then at 6:30, we're down at the Millerstone building across from Willard Library.
All right, good. And so we'll repeat all of that a little bit later in a moment. In fact, we'll pick up where we leave off and talk about Pump some more on WBCK. Richard Piet Show. We're here talking about a new book that Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester have written called The Original Battle Creek Crime King, and it's about Pump Arnold. His real name was Adam, but we called him Pump, or at least they did back then. I guess we shouldn't make too light of this. I mean, he was not a good guy, right? I mean, you wouldn't want to cross him.
No, I definitely wouldn't.
No, Arnold, if you crossed him, he was a vicious guy. He got into a dispute with one gentleman over a prostitute and had several of his thugs throw acid on the guy's face. One of the weirder instances we came across is, he did a hit and run on a small child in the street who just wouldn't get out of the way. He drove his carriage over him.
Oh, my.
This was not a nice guy. But in many respects, it was very humorous how he engaged with law enforcement. I mean, the most infamous being the whole Mayor Gage incident where the mayor personally, dressed as a hobo, had him arrested for illegally selling liquor. And Arnold has a statue made out of a visage of a hobo symbolizing the mayor and put it in front of his bar.
Right.
There's kind of this quasi-humorous side to him, although, it's hard to forget he did get arrested for murdering his only son.
Right. Yeah, so it is this odd mix of things. As you uncovered this story, I mean, I think folks look at these kinds of stories now to a great extent and think of them as theatrical or not real, to say nothing of the notion that this was happening here in Battle Creek. As you uncovered this, what was the climate that you were able to recognize then? I mean, was this common or was this unusual? Was Battle Creek just going with the flow here?
Well, this was back when Battle Creek was the Old West.
Yeah.
And I think that's an era that people don't know a lot about. We all know the Surreal City story. Everybody knows the Surreal City story. This ends, Arnold's story ends right when the surreal businesses begin to boom here.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the period of time when Battle Creek was considered a frontier town. And that was fascinating to me because there's not a lot written about it. And when you start going into it, you have to do research into some strange areas. We had to dig into the history of prostitution in Battle Creek, piecing that together through newspaper accounts, etc. And it was just a very different place, but the names are bizarrely familiar. His attorney's last name was Helmer. The Eldred family was very prominent in that period. So all the names where you associate now to streets or schools, etc., were actual people that were around at the time. And it was interesting to watch the interaction with Willard and him in the newspaper, for example. And, it's fun.
Yeah. You said at first you weren't sure this was a story. At what point did you become convinced?
After we started looking at all the... Once you look at the newspaper articles, it was like every single week he was in the paper for something. And it was like, what is this guy up to? And if you look farther into the story, it easily becomes a book.
Mm-hmm.
What did it for me was it had all the elements of a Greek tragedy. You had the biggest purveyor of illegal alcohol. It was Pump Arnold in the city. The city drunk was his son.
Mm.
And his wife was a member of the Women's Christian Temperance Union.
Wow.
And, so you had just this weird family dynamic. You almost wanted to sit at their dining room table and see what things were like then. It was inevitable at some point that, Pump and his son fought constantly. It was inevitable he was going to kill him, or one of them was going to end up dead. And so it's almost got that element of that kind of unfolds as you read through the book. But it's very tongue-in-cheek. I mean, Arnold was hilarious, especially during his trial.
When it seems like the Wild West purview about the law was completely different than what we might look upon it now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The book is called Original Battle Creek Crime King, and Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester have written about it, and it's Battle Creek. It's Battle Creek history. Here, we'll talk more about this coming up in just a minute on WBCK. We're here with Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester, the father-daughter writing team that brought you, as you remember, we talked about this, the murder of Maggie Hume. Now, the new book is called Original Battle Creek Crime King. It's about Battle Creek's Tony Soprano, Adam Arnold, known as Pump. And this is quite a story, and it gives us an opportunity to learn about history while we have this sort of soprano-ish figure, don't we?
Oh, yeah. Battle Creek's got a very rich history prior to the cereal industry, and I think a lot of people have forgotten about it. We had to research it, and it was fun. I mean, there were aspects of it that were humorous at times. When we researched the history of prostitution in Battle Creek, that was an interesting twist that, you aren't sure what you're going to find, and the things we found were hilarious. But it's a great way I think, for people to digest their local history. I think a lot of people forget that Battle Creek's had this incredible history. It's a neat way to kind of get into it without the boredom of reading a textbook history.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right. And as we were discussing a while ago, the hook of a figure like Pump really helps to attract attention. Yeah. So when you were enticed to look into this story, were you already planning another Battle Creek story?
No.
Not really, no. We were kind of open to do anything, and Pump kind of, after the Maggie Hume, we wanted a little bit of a break from, something unsolved and we took that very emotionally, so we kind of wanted a break, and Adam's story is kind of funny, and it's got good twists and turns. It was entertaining. Good part of history to look up.
So what about what's next? Any ideas?
Well, we have been for the last year working on a serial killing unsolved case down in Virginia, the Colonial Parkway murders. We've been interviewing family members, interviewing law enforcement officers. It started in 1986. As a matter of fact, 2 days ago marked the 30th anniversary of the first murder. So we've been working on that, and that book has to be done February of this year. So we've been methodically doing the research stage of that.
Right. It is interesting because that reporter from CBS that does that Everybody Has a Story thing, really some of the greatest stories come from that which is true, don't they?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
People want to hear about true things. And I think Hollywood has been rechurning through remaking old movies over and over again. And I understand the logic behind that. But having said that, to me, some of the most fascinating stories are right in your own backyard. All you got to do is go look for them. And they're more thrilling, and there's more twists and turns than anything you've seen come out of Hollywood. So hopefully they'll start latching on us. We're seeing a big rise now with the John Benet Ramsey and the O.J. Simpson thing. That true crime is finally starting to get some actual attention and traction out there. So it's exciting.
When you talk about the Maggie Hume story or the others, the really high-profile ones you just referred to, does it help? Is there a benefit when time goes by and people's emotions settle a little bit, and then you can maybe get through the details without so much dust?
There's an advantage and a disadvantage. A disadvantage is a lot of people forget the little details and the little stories here and there, things they may have seen or heard. Things, it's not as though you remember it as yesterday. 30 years is a long time. But there's also an advantage being enough time has gone past. People may have less emotions, but those emotions always come to the surface, as we've always found. But
they're not too far down there somewhere.
Yeah, we get approached all the time about take a look at this crime, take a look at that crime. And if it's a contemporary crime, while intriguing and maybe book-worthy, it's usually also being very actively engaged by law enforcement, and that just adds a level of complexity to this. And we've encountered this with the Colonial Parkway murders, that law enforcement is still working the case, and it's still a very active case after 30 years. So it does add some challenges to that. And I like having a little bit of distance from those crimes time-wise. It just helps to be able to do that.
Sure. An open case with perceived outsiders meddling around in it doesn't endear you to law enforcement, does it?
No. Well, we've been fortunate. Former law enforcement officers are great guys to work with, because they just want the case solved, and that always works to our advantage. But I will say that the FBI has a job to do, and we have a job to do. Right.
Very interesting. The original crime king, Adam Pump Arnold, is the focus of the book that Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester, father and daughter, have come up with this time. Where will you be today where folks can come and see you and pick up a copy?
Well, we're going to be over on Superior Street in Albion at the bookstore there from 3 to 5 today. And then we're going to be down at Miller Stone at Willard Library, our old stomping grounds. And we'll be down there at 6:30 this evening to do a presentation on this.
Well, congratulations on yet another accomplishment, and we look forward to the next one.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thanks for your time today, too, for visiting with us. It's Blaine Pardoe and Victoria Hester. Go and see them today in Albion or Battle Creek and check out the original Battle Creek Crime King.